So I have 2 copies of this book. I had this copy for a very, very long time. And then for Christmas last year, I got given this one. Now I've been meaning to read this book even before I got it, because it's been everywhere, right? And now I have 2 of them. So I'm going to read it, because if I don't do it, I'm going to have a 3rd one soon. So, watch me read Richard Osman, The Thursday Murder Cup. Welcome back to the Anti-Book Club with Thursday Murder Club. So I've been wanting to read this book obviously for ages, and as I mentioned in the intro, I have 2 copies of it actually, and I did read both copies. Like, I took the paperback with me when I was traveling and I read the hardback at home. So I'm now finished, and I don't have a ton of bookmarks, and just overall I would say I don't really have much to say about the book. It's gonna be quite a short review, I think. I would say the book was exactly what I thought it would be, which take that as you will. It could be positive, it could be negative. It was exactly what I thought it said on the tin or the sleeve. But it also wasn't anything more than that. Like, I quite like when a book surprises me, or, makes me go, oh, I didn't see that coming, or like, just gives me something that makes me go, oh, that's different. And I just felt like this book just did not. Like, it had some great characters in it. Obviously, the people in the Thursday Murder Club have some great characters in it. And then, like, there is Elizabeth, who's basically the leader. Oh yeah, I should tell you the plot. I forgot. I put it on my notes, but I forgot to tell you. So, the plot is essentially that, in this retirement village sort of thing, these 4 people meet once a week and they try and solve like old murders. It's just sort of like a pastime for them to do, so they can still use their brains and kind of like keep themselves busy a little bit. And then in the middle of them just doing that, a murder happens, and then suddenly they're faced with trying to solve a real murder alongside the police. So that's the story, right? And the 4 people who are in the Thursday Murder Club are obviously 4 older people who are all living in the retirement village. There's Elizabeth, who is the leader of the group. They keep hinting at the fact that she has some sort of nefarious past or dangerous past, but they don't really say what it was. And I felt like it was supposed to be very intriguing and stuff, but it actually just started annoying me. I was like, I get it, like, she's badass, or she's got some sort of weird past that would make her like be in touch with weird people, but like, you're not gonna tell me what it is, so can we just skip over? Like, it just annoyed me after a while. There's Ibrahim, who is basically just a former psychologist, who's just very interested. There's Joyce, who is basically the woman that you just don't notice. She's just there. But she's actually quite interested in these sort of things. And then there is Ron, and Ron is basically like, he's used to be head of a union. He's very loud, very vivacious, a little bit racist, but very good friends with Ibrahim. And just like a very working class bloke. And you can't kind of help but like him, because he's very like, of course I'm gonna make a ruckus. Who am I if I'm not gonna make a ruckus? Sort of person. So I really liked him. There was also Ian, who is the owner of the retirement village, and who is a character in its own right. And basically the way the book is told is that it keeps switching perspectives from different people, and sometimes the perspective is of Ian. But Ian as a person, I got a little bit frustrated with him, because the way that he's characterized is almost like a caricature. Like, he's a playboy, he hates Brexit, he's pro-Brexit, hates immigration, but happy to use Poles for cheaper labor. He obviously thinks older women are unattractive. He doesn't understand, like, he's very much into money, he doesn't understand woke stuff, and you know, people like that exist. And Donald Trump is here. Elon Musk is here. However, this chapter was told from his point of view, and I feel like that's not all that man is. Like, there must be more to him than just like I've got a quote that I can tell you. Where he's speaking to a coffee shop barista. Is all your coffee fair trade? Yes, all fair trade, smiles the young woman serving. Shame, says Ian. He doesn't want to pay an extra 15 pence to help someone he'll never meet in a country he'll never go to. Cup of tea, please. Almond milk. And it's like, you know, I get what you're trying to do, but again, this is like his story, his perspective. And surely you would get a little bit more of an insight. Like, Donald Trump isn't just a vile human being. Somebody isn't just bad. Like, they have their reasons. Be it, I don't know, them feeling the loss of their youth. Like, I could imagine, say, Donald Trump feeling, like, worried about losing his mind, because he might be noticing that his mind isn't the way it used to be, or losing your looks, or, you know, it isn't just all about people. It felt very surface level. And it frustrates me, because it's not even like, oh, well, you don't get much time to characterize them. Because I have read books where characters had mere lines, but were perfectly characterized in those lines. You knew who they were. You knew what they would say. You knew how they would react to certain things. Whereas with Ian, I had so much time with him, and all I feel is like, ah, well, he's just terrible. There's nothing else. They're just terrible. Like the 4 people from the murder club, the police people, like, they all have a bit more to them. But I feel like Ian was just painted as like, yeah, he's just horrible. And I was like, yeah, but surely there should be more. You know what I mean? Even if you do something like, oh, I don't know, he has felt his local community changing with people coming in from other culture. Like, that's not a valid excuse, but that would at least give me some inkling of, like, this is why he is the way he is. Do you know what I mean? Like, that just wasn't there at all. He seemed to just be horrible for no reason. So that was a bit frustrating. So yeah. And then, like I said, he owns the retirement villages and wants to develop them as well. I do have a quote about the retirement villages that I just wanted to read you. Well, more accurately, 3 wards, as the west-facing side of the convent is now entirely glazed to accommodate the residents' swimming pool complex. It looks out over the bowling green and then further down to the visitors' car park, the permits for which are rationed to such an extent that the parking committee is the single most powerful cabal within Cooper's Chase. That's the retirement community. Beside the swimming pool is a small arthritis therapy pool, which looks like a jacuzzi, largely for the reason that it is a jacuzzi. Take the lift up to the recreation rooms next, the gym and the exercise studio, where residents could happily Zumba among the ghosts of the single beds. Then there's the jigsaw room for gentler activities and associations. There's the library and the lounge for bigger and more controversial committee meetings, or for football and the flat-screen TV. Then down again to the ground floor, where the long tables of the convent factory are now the contemporary upscale restaurant. And I was reading this and I was like, damn, I'd like to live there. That sounds amazing. Like, obviously this is a very upscale retirement village, but still I was like, damn, I'd like to live there, please. In my old, well, not even my old years, I'll live there now. Like, it was just nice, right? Very nice. Let me I also have to tell you that about halfway through the book, and I think I've talked about this in the midway review, I got very invested in a potential romance between the 2 police officers who are investigating the same murder, Chris and Donna. And that's even though it is made quite clear that Chris is much, much older than Donna. But I'm like, it doesn't mean anything. It would be lovely if this had like a mixed age romance. And also like the way Chris is described, he doesn't necessarily feel that old. But Chris is by far my favorite character in the whole bloody book. I love him. He is so funny, so kind, quite smart. Not just quite smart, he's very smart. He's clearly a very excellent police detective, even though he's like more in like a small town sort of police department, right? But I have some quotes which hopefully will show you why I was hoping that maybe they would develop something a little bit more between them. I'm also thinking, why don't you ever iron your shirts, says Donna. Well, I used to iron just the front bit because the rest was always under a jacket. And then I thought, well, I'm wearing a tie too, so why bother at all? Does anyone really notice? Of course they notice, says Donna. I notice. Well, you're a police officer, Donna, says Chris. I'll start ironing shirts when I get a girlfriend. You won't get a girlfriend until you start ironing your shirts, which is bullshit, by the way. And then Chris says, it's a real catch-22 for sure, says Chris. Anyway, I've always found that shirts sort of iron themselves while you're wearing them. Oh, I love the banter between them. And then this is them speaking to Mr. Bentham. And Mr. Bentham says to Donna, you're very beautiful, by the way, for a police officer. You'll see how beautiful I am if I ever have to arrest you. Well, not beautiful, adds Ian, but attractive enough for around here. Thank you for your time, Mr. Bentham, says Chris, standing. If there's anything else, we'll be in touch. And if you ever need to tell me I'm beautiful, you have my number. Like, how can you not like him? He's just so funny. I just love him. He's just hilarious. And this is why I got very invested in a romance between the two, which I was like, it's probably not gonna happen, but wouldn't it be great? They just seem perfectly suited to each other. They have banter, you know. It is. There's also quite a funny moment when the Thursday Murder Club is trying to get information out from Chris as the lead police officer. And they're trying to like sort of obfuscate him, I guess. So they've invited Chris, telling him that you know, he's gonna be able to speak to them and the son of Ron, who was a witness and stuff. And then I'm gonna have to see where I read it from. Yeah. I'm gonna cut some bits out, but let's read the whole scene. As you know, myself and PC the Frat is over here in the chair, making herself comfortable, are investigating the murder of Tony Curran. He's a man I believe you all have some knowledge of. I can't read this without it being a spoiler, I just realized. I'm gonna have to keep this for the spoiler section, which I will. But anyways, yeah. So I knew a romance between Chris and Donna wasn't gonna happen, and I was like, but wouldn't it be nice? But generally, so I really enjoyed the book. I don't think it was amazing. I don't think it was anything world-shattering. Like I said, some of the characterization I didn't find that great. Did I see a twist or the like resolve coming? No, but I also, like, it wasn't one where I was like, I need to know. Like, I was like, I'm mildly interested. And I think that's partly because the Thursday Murder Club themselves view it more as like interesting and not like, we need to solve this. Like, they were just like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we solved it? Like, they never really viewed it as like, this was a murder, we have to solve. Like, it didn't have that, like, the high stakes, it's gotta be solved. Crime drama, you know? It was just like, that would be quite cute if we solved it. And not the police. They also kept getting away with things where I was like, you shouldn't be getting away with it. And kind of, it was supposed to, I think, show you like how clever they are. But I was like, it's not clever. You're just being annoying. Like, why are you doing things that you know are highly illegal just because you're like, oh, we are old, nobody's gonna care. I mean, a part of me does appreciate the fact that, you know, it's kind of showing you that old people do still have, you know, the wits about themselves and all of that. But yeah, I just found it sometimes quite annoying how they just blatantly, immediately thought they weren't gonna get in trouble for anything. But it did remind me, I used to have a book, I still have it. It must be back at home in Germany. But it was called, with 60 years, The Murder Begins. And it was basically hundreds of stories, fictional stories, of old women, 66 and up, committing murder and getting away with it and stuff. And it was quite funny. And it was basically all based on the premise that people don't really think old people are dangerous. Although I think nowadays it's a bit different, because my mom is 66 and I wouldn't think she would get away with murdering somebody just because people would think she's old and decrepit, because she's not. So I think 66 used to be very different, right? But it did make me think of that book and laugh. Right, so I'm gonna do a spoiler section now. It's gonna be a very short spoiler section, but a spoiler section. So basically what happens in the book is that one of the people that works with Ian Ventham, who owns Cooper's Chase, a builder called Tony Curran, gets murdered. And then they're looking at like who could have murdered him. And then Ian Ventham also gets murdered, who was a suspect. And And then it's all about trying to find out what happened, who could it have been, and like that was again mildly interesting, but I didn't find it that interesting. It felt very much like a plot device. For me, things didn't get interesting. Later on, they're trying to work out, because Ian Vantham essentially dies in a very public way. He's trying to access some grounds, and all the residents of Cooper Chase are trying to prevent him from it. And then there's like an altercation with a gentleman called Father Mackey, although he's apparently not really a father, but then also sort of really a father, who wants to protect the grounds, and he's basically having an altercation with him, and like lots of other people are trying to pull them apart, and then he's dead. So it's like very public. So you're like, whoa, one of those people must have killed him, right? And then they're trying to work out who could have killed him, who was even close enough to him. And then they find a skeleton in one of the graves that's in a graveyard that's already there. And basically that's the graveyard is what Ian Vantham wanted to develop, and Father Mackey didn't want it to happen. Neither do the residents of Cooper Chase. And only then did it kind of become mildly interesting, but then it kind of kept veering off into weird, because they were like, oh, it must be that guy. And then I was like, no, it's not that guy. He has other reasons why he didn't want that graveyard to be developed. Father Mackey, it must be Father Mackey. But no, Father Mackey, again, had his own little story where he had, like, been at a convent, because it used to be a convent, and, like, fallen in love with a girl there. And that girl ended her life, and she's in that graveyard, and that's why he doesn't want it to be. And it's like, I was like, okay, great, I don't care. Like, I was like, I don't know, I just didn't care. I was like, whatever, I don't care. So no, I didn't see it coming, who did eventually murder him, but I also didn't care. I don't know. It just didn't excite me. But let me read that scene now for you that I could read. So this is a scene where Chris and Donna are trying to talk to the Thursday Murder Club about the murder of Tony Curran. As you know, myself and PC the Frighter's over there in the chair, making herself comfortable. Love Chris. Are investigating the murder of Tony Curran. He's a man I believe you all have some knowledge of, a local builder and property developer. As you also know, Mr. Curran tragically passed away last week, and we have certain questions pertaining to this event. Joyce has more bad news for him. Oh, sorry. He attempts a sip at the tea, which was given to him, but it is still scalding hot, and any blowing would send a wave over the brim. Joyce has more bad news for him. We have forgotten our manners, Detective Chief Inspector. We haven't offered you any cake. She produces a lemon drizzle already cut into slices and offers it to Chris. Chris, unable to raise a hand to say no thank you, because he's like super, like, put in between two people. So he's like this on the couch, which is his tea. Says, I won't, I had a big lunch. Oh, just try a slice. I made it especially, says Joyce, in a voice so proud that Chris has no choice. Go on then, he says, and Joyce balances a slice of cake on his saucer. So perhaps you have a suspect by now, asks Elizabeth, or are you only looking at Vantham? Ibrahim says it's better than the M&S lemon drizzle. We will have a number of suspects, says Ibrahim. If I know DCI Hudson, he's very thorough. If you notice anything unusual, that's the almond flour, says Joyce. Is that right, son? You got any suspects? Ron asks Chris. Well, it wouldn't be narrowing it all down. Bet you got forensics, says Ron. I always watch CSI with Jason. He'll love all this. What you got? Fingerprints? DNA? Chris remembers Ron as being more confused than this the other day. Well, that's why I'm here, as you know. I know you and Joyce were having a drink with your son, Mr. Ritchie, and I think he might be joining us. It would be good to talk to him too. He just texted, said Ron. He will be 10 minutes. I bet he'd love to know the circumstances, says Elizabeth. He'd love that, confirms Roy. Well, again, it's not really in my, says Chris. M&S lemon drizzle cake is over-sugared, Inspector. That's my opinion, interrupts Ibrahim. Not just my opinion either, if you look at the discussion boards. Chris is struggling further now because the slice of cake is slightly too big for the gap between the bottom of the cup and the edge of the saucer, and it's taking all of his efforts to keep balanced. Still, he has had a career of interviewing killers, psychopaths, con artists, and liars of every sort, so he plows on. We really just need to talk to Mr. Ritchie and his son. And Joyce, I think you also saw, CSI is too American for me, interrupts Joyce. Lewis is my favorite. It's ITV3. I've got them backing up on my Sky Plus. I think I'm the only one in the village who can work Sky Plus. I like the Rebus book, adds Ibrahim, if you know them. Rebus is from Scotland, and goodness me, he has a terrible time of it. Patricia Hicks Highsmith for me, says Elizabeth. They'll never top the Sweeney, though. And I've read all the Mark Billinghams, says Ron Ritchie, again with more confidence than Chris remembers. Chris cannot even attempt to sip his tea now. Is lifting it to his lips would unbalance the cake, and lifting the cup of the saucer would tip the cake in the saucer center and make it impossible to put it back down again. He feels sweat starting to trickle down his back, reminding him of the time he interviewed 25-stone Hell's Angels enforcers with Eichel coppers tattooed around his neck. And I really enjoyed that scene. And this was actually probably my favorite scene between the Thursday Murder Club and the police, where they were just obfuscating him from like 4 different directions with information being peppered at him. And it was just like them interrogating him, but like confusing him at the same time. And it was just really, really funny. And I really enjoyed reading about it. And I'm a bit sad that that was like really the only time that really came to the fore. There were a couple of other times throughout the book where they kind of used their charms or their age or anything to get police to do what they want to do, but there is basically not enough of that, because I really enjoyed that. The more tag teaming, you know. In the end, to tell you, it turns out that Ian Vantham was killed by John, and John killed him because his wife, Penny, who is in nearby, it's basically next to Cooper's Chase, is like a nursing home, and she's in a nursing home, basically she's not there anymore. It's like in a coma. It's never really expressed what it is, but she's clearly like can't communicate, can't talk, can't anything. And basically, when she was a young copper, she killed a man, and that man is the skeleton that was buried in the graveyard. And John, her husband, killed Ian Vantham so that they wouldn't dig it up and find the skeleton and potentially expose her doing that. As for the original builder, he was killed by the Polish builder Bogdan, who is basically the guy that would take over from him. But he didn't kill him for profit or anything like that. He killed him because he was, throughout the whole book, there's the second sort of narrative of like 20, 30 years ago, this kid got shot. And this has changed everything for everybody in the book, and everybody's sort of touched by it. I don't really know why that was. Like, it didn't really feel that important, and it felt kind of weird that everybody was sort of affected by it. But basically, Bogdan, his friend, was killed because he was a witness, basically, to it. And in revenge, 30-something odd years later, he murders Tony. Weird. Also, at the end, they all know, all of a sudden, like they kept picking who it could be, and they went right. But then they know all of a sudden, for some reason, all of them, that Bogdan did it, but they don't do anything about it. And I was like, that seems weird. Because especially since they are so intent on solving murders, it would feel weird that they wouldn't want. Well, maybe they're happy because they have solved it, although they don't know they solved it. It's not like Bogdan said to anybody, I did it, except for one person. But anyways, it just felt a bit strange that they were all just like, oh yeah, Bogdan did it, but that's fine. Yes, I have some more quotes. Let me find them. Oh yes, I found it quite interesting because I always love when this happens. So in the book they mention Maidstone, which isn't that far away from me, but they also mention Leipzig. And that's my hometown. And I was like, oh. And it very rarely ever gets mentioned because it's not a very big town in Germany. But it was in the Avengers. And now it was in the Thursday Murder Club. So it's becoming important. Yeah, like for example, at one point, you know, they find the skeleton and they don't tell police about it. And Donna's like, you could literally go to jail over it. And they're like, oh, no, we won't. And it's very like, yes, you will. Also, like throughout the entire book, Elizabeth is basically always like one step ahead and she goes to places and speaks to people. But there's one moment when Jason Ritchie and somebody else decide to go and speak. They decide to go to a pub and meet with somebody that is connected to that murder from donkeys years ago, that's somehow connected to this murder, the current one. But even though Elizabeth is always intent on knowing everything about the investigation and knowing like who's doing what and where, she is not going to that pub. She's not, like, that's what she would usually do. She would suddenly, you know, come in and sit in the corner and watch you. That's sort of her MO. But she doesn't do that. She doesn't ever find out where they went or what they discussed. Like, it just seemed very unlike the character that was established for her. Let me see. Yeah, this is just all about them going to this weird meeting that apparently Elizabeth had no interest in. They told some random dude about the fact that they had found a body, but, you know, who cares about, you know, being secret in police? Oh, yes, I talked about it. So, yeah. So that's the Thursday Murder Club. I didn't really enjoy it that much. Unfortunately. I really hoped I would find it funnier. I really thought it would be a 4-star. But I just found that it had some bits in it that I just found a little bit, like, just a lack. It didn't surprise me in any way. It didn't excite me in any way. Nothing.